Hi friends, Krista here. Thank you so much for stopping by Books and Jams. It is the middle of May, and that means it's time for a mid-month wrap-up. And finally, I have a month where I can say I'm officially slowing down. I only have 4 books that I've completed so far this month and 1 DNF. And one of them I read mostly in April. I wouldn't say that I'm in a reading slump, but I will say that it's pretty close, or it was pretty close. I think I'm out of it now, but there was a week or so there where I just did not feel like picking up books. And there's a reason for it, and we'll talk about it as we go through the books that I have to share with you today. So the first book that I'll talk about is one that I read mostly in April. It is book 7 of the Keeper of Lost Cities series. So again, can't tell you too much about this book in particular, but you've heard me talk about this series a lot. You've heard me say how much I love it, and I still do. However, I have heard from at least one other of you that you got this far in the series and then stopped, and I can totally see why. This book, the first half or more, takes place in one room in the healing center at the school where these kids go to school. 2 of the kids had something happen to them at the very beginning, and they spend a really long time recovering in the healing center. And so others come in and there's still a lot of dialogue, there's still a lot of things going on, but it takes place in one room. And that got a little frustrating. At one point I was like, okay, can we please move out of the healing center? And the other thing that I didn't totally love about this book is that there is a love triangle that has been kind of brewing over the last couple of books that was a bigger focus in this one. I, again, don't think that the romance is a huge part of this story up until this book. It definitely was a big part in this one. And for that reason, this one is not one of my favorites in the series. Still, my favorites are 3, 4, and 6. Book 7 is probably now my least favorite, but I still love the series and I'm still very eager to continue. The next book that I read, I listened to on audiobook, and that was Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. This one is on my recommendations cart. Many of you have been recommending this book to me for a couple of years now, and I finally read it. It also fits the big and small prompt from Lala's Buzzwordathon challenge for the year. I don't remember what month big and small was the prompt, but this completes that part of the challenge. And this is one that I had heard a lot about. Jodi Picoult is somebody that I have read 1 or 2 of her books a really long time ago, but nothing recently. I'm really glad that I read this one though. She has a way of presenting a situation that you may have a gut or instinctual way that you would react in this situation, but she has a way of presenting it that makes you question those gut reactions and makes you see things from different perspectives. This one was a heavy story. It was really difficult to read at times. So we follow this nurse, an African-American nurse who works with the babies, and she's been doing it for a really long time, and she's very good at her job. Well, one day she goes in to check up on this baby that was just born. The mother and father of the baby are white supremacists, and they do not want this nurse named Ruth. They don't want Ruth or any African Americans touching their baby at all. Well, a couple days later, Ruth has just worked a double. She's taking a moment to have a power bar and kind of get a breather. The baby comes into the room wherever she is in the nursery to get circumcised. They're short-staffed. The nurse who is watching that baby gets called away. Anyway, something happens and Ruth is the only one there. What does she do? She's been told she's not allowed to touch this baby by her supervisor, but the baby is in distress. What does she do? And that's what this book is all about. There ends up being this big court case, and it is a lot, obviously, about race and rights, human rights. But it's also about this baby and this family. And it just was a difficult book, but so good. It was a hard one to listen to because the white supremacists use words that are just offensive and inappropriate. And they were awful, awful people. I don't know if Jodi was trying to get us to feel for them in that they're still a new mom and a new dad excited about their baby. It was hard to feel for them because I was so angry with them. And it was hard to imagine being in Ruth's shoes and what she should have done, what she did do. yeah, it just was a lot to think about, which I love in Jodi P's books. I did not give it 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars because I did think the ending, the epilogue part or the last chapter was almost cheesy in the way that everything kind of turned out. And I didn't really like it. After this difficult and thought-provoking book, the last chapter just felt like, oh, really? I don't know. Things got tied up in a pretty red bow, and I didn't think that this kind of a book needed a pretty red bow at the end. So I did not love the last chapter, but I did really enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars, even though it was a difficult topic and book to read. It was important, and I'm glad I finally read it. It's been on my shelves for a really long time. I really liked that one. It was heavy though. Right after that, or kind of at the same time as that, I had picked up Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jesse. I really loved Homegoing by Ya Jesse. And so I was very excited to pick up Transcendent Kingdom, but I DNF'd it. I made it over 100 pages, but nothing happens. There's this girl, Gifty, who is a scientist, and we're learning about her she's a research lab student. Is she a science student? Is she still a student? I don't know. She works in a research lab with mice, and she's coming up with her doctoral thesis, I think is what it is. And she also is reflecting back on her life growing up in a very religious home and with her mother and an immigrant family. And she's reflecting on all of these different scenes in her life and her faith as a child and her mother's faith and what things happened with her dad and with her brother. But it's all kind of snippets, and we kind of bounce around in Gifty's memory, and then we come back to the present for a little bit, and then we bounce back around. And it's all about this young woman fitting together science and faith in her life. I think that that's an interesting and important topic. I think it's relevant, and I'm here for that. However, there was no story propelling us forward at all. There was no plot line. There was no movement or direction in this book. It was just reflections and reflections and reflections. So while I thought the writing was beautiful and the topic and themes very important and interesting, I was so bored. I was just dreading every time I would go to pick this one up. I just really didn't want to. I was buddy reading it, and so I wanted to read it so that I could discuss with my buddy. I would find quotes here and there that I just thought were wonderfully worded and different things like that. But I don't know if it's just because this was such a heavy read that the timing wasn't right for this. But I honestly just know I am somebody who, while I love really good character development, I also need there to be a propulsive plot, a plot that's moving forward, a story that's happening. And this just didn't have it. So I was very bummed. To DNF that, but I don't know if it's someday I'll pick it back up and try again or not, but I'm thinking it's probably an or not situation. It's going to get unhauled. After those 2 books is when I kind of just didn't feel like picking up anything. And I binged through The Circle on Netflix and a couple other shows. I'm watching How I Met Your Mother, just like cheesy and light fluff TV. I watched the LuLaRoe documentary on Amazon Prime. Like, I just was having all the TV time and not very interested in picking up a book really at all. So I knew I needed something that was totally different. And so in my sprints last weekend, I picked up My Fine Fellow by Janique Cohen. I'm giving this one 3 stars. It was light and fluffy and kind of fun, but it also had parts that were a little bit on the boring side. We followed 2 young women who are studying to be culinarians or chefs, called females culinarians. They meet this boy on the street who's their age, but he is very poor and is selling food on the street, empanadas actually. So they buy empanadas from him, and one of the friends, Helena, she is very prideful and arrogant, and they have to come up with this big project for their final year, and she decides she's going to take this boy and she's going to train him to become a gentleman chef. So then he can open up his own little restaurant or shop, whatever it is that he wants to. So she's going to just teach him everything that she knows. So these two young women kind of work together to teach this boy and help him to become a gentleman chef. Hijinks ensue, a little bit of romance happens. I love the focus on food. There was aspects of this that were a lot of fun, but there was a big chunk in the middle where nothing was really happening, and that bored me. I needed there to be a little more action. So I'm only giving this 3 stars. It was cute. I don't know that I would really recommend it. If you like food in books, go ahead and pick it up. But you're not really missing out, I wouldn't say, if you skip this one. And then finally last night, I was taking a break from another buddy read that I'm reading because I was ahead. And I finished the other book that I started during my sprints last weekend, which is a graphic memoir, They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. So this is a graphic novel, but it's a memoir of George Takei's life as a young boy being sent with his family to Japanese internment camps during World War II. So we learn a lot about what that was like for him and his family, what it was like inside the camps, surface level, what was going on in the government, why did that even happen? And then towards the end, a little bit of George Takei becoming an actor and an activist. And it was very good. I gave this one 4 stars. I just think that that's an aspect of our history in the United States that has been glossed over too often. So yeah, it was very interesting, very well done. The graphic style is just black and white with we just follow this family. George is the oldest of 3 kids. So we see his mom and his dad kind of became a leader in their block in each of the 2 different camps that they were sent to. The mom did their best to make it more of an adventure for the kids rather than a sad and scary thing. They did their best to try to hide the truth from their kids while they were young, not hide the truth. He said his dad was very open about things as they got older and had very open discussions about what was going on and what that meant and the reasoning behind the decisions that his parents made at different times and why they made those decisions. Yeah, it just was very good. Very, very good. So that's all that I've read this month. I am in the middle, the first quarter or so into the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and I'm loving it. I'm loving this mystery so much. Oh my word. I'm so clueless as to what's really going on, but I love it. And I'm hoping that will be what gets me out of this kind of like the doldrums at the moment. So here are the 4 books that I've read this month. Not that much reading, but, and yeah, because most of this happened in April. So I've really only read 3 full complete books and then a little bit of this one to finish it up. It's been a weird reading month for me so far in May. I would love to hear about your reading month. Hopefully it's better than mine. I hope that you've been reading some fantastic books. I would love to hear about your thoughts on the books I shared today or about what you're reading down in the comments below. As always, you know I love chatting with you in the comments. It's my favorite thing. And I thank you so much for spending a few moments with me, hanging out today, and I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.